Hi, this is Simeon, and I'm here today for the Banking on Bytes podcast. And I have with me my student, Caden. And with us, very graciously joining us today is Mr. Alex, Head of Retail from Maybank Securities. Mr. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here today. My name's Alex. I head retail for Maybank Securities Singapore. So I oversee our Salesforce digital platform marketing. And what we do is effectively we're offering a retail brokerage service to customers that are looking to invest in financial markets. I've been with the firm for around 3 years now, being part of the larger Maybank Group organization. I started my career out in 2008 in Saxo Bank in Denmark. So having spent over a decade across Copenhagen and Singapore with them, you could say my career started in fintech. So I've kind of seen both sides of a fintech world and a little bit more of a traditional financial services world.
Sounds great. So, yeah, you touched about fintech, right? And that is the premise of our module here, Fintech Innovations. Maybe you can share with us what would you think is the crux of fintech itself?
I think it really boils down to three things in essence. It's customer experience, efficiency, and scalability. So if you look at how fintechs have structured themselves and the problems they've been trying to solve ever since fintech became a buzzword, it's really just trying to solve those three things. There's ways that customers are, or problem pain points that customers are feeling, and fintechs have come in and kind of looked at things in a different manner. At Saxo, when I started out, the phrase we used to say back in 2008 was democratizing market access, which arguably I think fintechs have been largely successful at, is improving the overall customer experience, but doing so in a efficient and scalable manner. What I mean by that is they kind of don't like to duplicate across multiple geographies or multiple centers. The way they organize and structure themselves, as well as how they build out their technology capabilities, is always with the view that it should be, quick, automated, efficient, and highly replicable and scalable.
Okay. So, 2008 till now, there's been quite a big shift, right? So we had the GFC in 08, 09. Then afterwards, we had COVID. In between, we had the Eurozone crisis as well, right? How have you seen, or how do you think fintech has sort of evolved during this span of time? I think you touched a little bit about customer centricity.
Yeah, so I think it's evolved rapidly. And I think the key driver, there's naturally many drivers behind it, but the key for me has been smartphone adoption. And if you go back to 2008 when I started out, smartphones were really at, let's say, the beginning or inception of widespread adoption globally. When I joined, everybody got a BlackBerry, right? So that smartphone evolution has really kind of accelerated the CX focus in fintechs. Because if you fast forward to today, opposed to 2008, you don't go to a website to book a flight or a hotel anymore. Everything that you do in your life, and this is stretching across all demographics, is becoming increasingly mobile. So I think really it's kind of down to the smartphone in essence, but as a result of that, people have really started to emphasize more heavily on customer actions, user behavior, and user consumption, but all with a mobile-first strategy.
Okay. So it does sound like the smartphone has enabled this entire drive for technological change.
I would say twofold. The mobile has enabled or accelerated how we think about consumers. The second is naturally post the internet in the last 25 years, technology has also rapidly developed. So I think it's a combination of technology, smartphone, but also arguably social media has also had an impact, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. So I don't think that will necessarily change in the future. I think it will only continue.
Right. So maybe we can drill this down further deeper in your current employ, which is the brokerage business, right? How do you see fintech itself helping with this brokerage business? Either helping, or is it like a two-sided sword, or two-edged sword? Sorry. Yes.
No, I think I understand where you're coming from with is it a double-edged sword? But I firmly believe that fintech has delivered at least provocative thought process to traditional business. So if you look at the impact of fintech, one of it is actually disrupting business models.
Yes.
People have changed how they work, they've changed organization structures because somebody else has come out with a more efficient way of doing things. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing in any means. It's, I think, important that as a civilization continue to evolve and develop and do things in a smarter way. For us, I think that we will still need to focus on these three components of customer experience, scalability, and efficiency. The question is just how quickly you can do it, how effective you can do it, how efficient you can do it. And you also need to ensure that you don't get blinded by fintechs. What I mean by that is you have to stay true to what your value to society and to the industry is, and you shouldn't deviate from that simply because there's something else that may look shiny to you.
Okay. So, yeah, I think when I first joined the industry, so previously I was from Maybank as well, right, as an analyst. When I first joined the industry, they were saying that the remisiers or the TRs are sunset industry, and that in 5 years or in 10 years at that point in time, they probably not have a job anymore. But today, we are kind of seeing things slightly differently, don't you think? Or what do you think is sort of helping the TRs in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think that it's an unfair narrative to say it's sunset, right? Because they do add value to the economy. They do add value to individuals looking to invest in markets. And because they add value, they continue to exist. I think the role of the remisier will evolve over time. And it has evolved. If you look at it, if you look at how they started, it was pretty much with phones and very high touch human contact.
Yes.
There's a lot of digital capabilities right now. How financial markets is a noisy kind of place.
Yes.
There's a lot going on. Lots of markets, lots of products, lots of opportunities. And as you're starting out your journey into investing, it can be quite difficult to navigate through that, especially if you don't work in the financial services industry.
Yeah.
So there is some value add there. I think it will evolve how they engage with their customers, the tools that they use, and kind of what their focus area is in the future. So I see it somewhat complementary to the digital development.
Okay, so maybe you could give us some additional color on this, like how does a tech-enabled workforce in the remisier space actually helps to enhance value to the consumer?
Yeah, so I think there's twofold, right? So one is delivering value to the end consumer. The second is delivering value internally to the individual. Because when we talk about efficiency and scalability, it's not just the customer angle, it's also what you need internally to effectively execute that for the client. If you look at it, a lot has evolved and changed in kind of the tools that are available out in the market today. You have different communication methods, so you're able to communicate with clients through messaging channels, through social media, soft telephony, kind of the list goes on with how you engage with customers. How you distribute content to that customer also needs to be looked at, because traditional research reports were geared more to institutional investors. Yes. They were quite lengthy. And depending on who the end consumer is and the demographic, they may wish to consume that in a completely different manner. I think from a customer lens, the more effective we can be at ensuring that the information that we provide to the TR continues to evolve in the right way, we will ensure that we continue to provide the necessary information that the client needs to evolve in their own financial journey.
So it does sound like there is this value chain whereby, the research is the origination of this content, and then it feeds through to the TRs. And thereafter, the TRs, being a tech-enabled workforce, would then be able to engage their clients through various means of communications, whether it be like what you mentioned, social media, it could be through TikTok and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, look, like this has developed in many ways over time. I mean, I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
If you called a customer service desk 15 years ago, they don't know who you are. They had a physical phone and they pick up. Now in a fintech environment, the way that it's structured is when you onboard as a customer, your telephone number is registered in a CRM system of theirs. That's integrated into their omni-channel contact center service, right? So when you call, they know immediately who you are. They know when you last contacted. They know pretty much everything about you from your engagement with them. So my point is that that's just the beginning of where this ultimately will go, because what we're starting to see is people dissect the data further and further and further to try and ensure that what we deliver to clients, how we engage clients, is tailored to the individual, but you will need technology to do it at scale.
Okay, so maybe you want to share about towards more of the future of fintech. So how do you see the banking and finance industry maybe 10 years from now with the evolution of fintech?
I think there's 3 or 4 areas that we're likely to see quite a lot of evolution, let's say. I think there'll be a lot of development in terms of cloud and cloud adoption. So I think banks are still at the early stages of cloud adoption. There are some that are doing it a bit more than others, but I think that will only continue to evolve and develop. I think that there are certain operational processes in financial markets that have a long way to go in terms of efficiency. So I could easily see areas like settlement and clearing adopting blockchain technology solutions to have a more efficient settlement and clearing process. Equally, payments, if you look at cross-border payments, so if you want to send US dollars, for example, it's actually, in my personal opinion, not the most efficient way that is currently done. So I see, kind of a lot of these enabler areas of a customer journey evolving rapidly. And then I think the third area that will evolve rapidly is the use of AI within financial institutions. So it's still, in my view, very, very early in terms of use cases and adoptions, but I think it's quite clear in terms of how and where they can be adopted.
So I think you mentioned about blockchain and AI, right? So maybe elaborate a bit about how AI can actually be used in the fintech industry.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give you an example of the use of AI. And maybe the best way for me to give you an example of how it could be used, for example, is to explain what somebody showed me a few weeks ago. So there's a company in Europe, right, that is developing a tool, right, using AI. Now, what they do is actually they profile the customer using data. So the customer may actually get some initial questions upon onboarding in terms of risk appetite, sectors, geographic interests. But what they then do is the product is really geared towards individuals who are very new to investing and don't have much experience in financial markets. So it helps them in very simple ways, use simple terms. So for example, if I have $1,000 and I'm looking to invest, but I have a risk appetite of X%, right? Let's just say it's 25%. The AI engine will actually take and compute all of the inputs that the customer has provided and propose an actual portfolio for the client to consider. So it will actually start to weigh how much of each individual stock you should be looking at, what the potential risks are, and if you wish to add diversification to the portfolio, these are certain ETFs in underlying asset classes that could help. So something like that, I could easily see evolving into something that has wider adoption in 5-10 years, where to help individuals better understand how to manage their wealth going forward, I think a lot of AI tools will be used.
So just a quick follow-up on this. It sounds a little bit like a more portfolio management or wealth management on a person's portfolio. So
Correct.
how does this really differ from the robo-advisors that we have in today's market?
I think it's very similar in essence. However, if you look at kind of traditional robo-advisory in the direction that is headed, if you look at something like, for example, Stashaway, right? When you sign up as a client for Stashaway, you fill out the same kind of profiling and criteria. But from there on, you kind of just leave it to Stashaway to handle, right? There's not so much customization tailored to what you as an individual are interested in. For whatever reason, depending on where I sit in terms of geography, my career, or even background, I may have certain biases or certain views at a macro level that I wish reflected in a portfolio. So I may not have necessarily a good grasp on Vietnamese stocks on an individual level, but I may, because I work in the technology industry or whatever, have a certain view that at a macro level, Vietnam will do very well over the next 20 years. Now, how a retail investor gets exposure and access to investing in that geography is not always as simple as trading in the United States, where everything is largely available and known. So I think that it will be somewhat different in the sense that it will be far more tailored to the individual, and that's kind of the direction I see it heading.
So maybe just as a wrap up, what are the kind of skills or what do you think are the kind of characteristics that a young person like Caden would have to have when fintech evolves in the industry? What kind of skills should he have when he enters the industry as an employee?
I think different people can answer that in many different ways. For me personally, I would answer that with you have to have an open mindset, because the world as you know it today will be different tomorrow, and you have to be able to adapt and evolve to change. There are certain skill sets that are very useful for youngsters that I wish I had done once upon a time, but when I was a kid, playing football was more popular than learning how to code Python. So there are evolutions I see, right? When I was 5 years old, I didn't have an iPad. Nowadays, when you're 5 years old, you're changing your parents' password, right?
Exactly.
So I think that for me, the open mindset is the most important, but I think the adaptation and evolution of using AI and tools that evolve will become quite important in the future. Obviously, technology is having a huge impact going forward, so I think it is worthwhile for youngsters to take the time to at least have a high level or basic understanding of how technology actually works, because it's going to only increase in terms of usage in the future.
Okay, thanks. Great. Lots of insights, very good inputs from you, Mr. Alex. Thank you for, again, gracing our podcast. Appreciate the
Thank you for
inputs.
having me.